All right, here we go. All right, it's Crockett36, and after a great Easter weekend and traveling to Maine, I am back with an interview with Oztea, the creator of the Oztea 41 version on AAA, which is nexusanalyze.org, and AAA websites, and sort of comes together. There's a lot of interesting stuff on there. If you have a lot of time, you could look into that because it is fun. All sorts of stuff, and Oztea has certainly put it out, and I'm going to share some of that with you today because it's significant. Now, the last couple of interviews we've had, particularly Arthur Bomber Harris and Jay Dow, really saw the game as a set and as a thing which is which they're trying to win the game. They're trying to win the game as is, and I see it a little bit with Good Captain, and I certainly see it with Austin here, where he is just. These are pieces, these are products that we have, but they're also you can tinker with them. Now, I play tested. That's one of the things I show on my YouTube channel. I'm play testing on the 14th, I think it is, with Imperial Borders. I'm excited about that. But there are many, many rules that we find that that fall on the cutting room floor, so to speak. For instance, in War Room, there was a great rule that I loved, which was that oil was required for movement, which I don't know if you know this, but oil is required for movement. So it mirrors history nicely. And I find that Austin is of the same ilk, and I like that. There was a rules discussion on Facebook, last comment, and then I'm going to get into Austin, and that was that Otterbox was trash, or was so broken beyond repair, and I just think that's ridiculous. I think Austin will too. It's plus 500 pieces, not including territory, not including IPCs, which you could. And if you did include those, it's up in the 700s, 800s, and most the bids right now for Otterbox or even balance mode are within the, well, Otterbox, it's in the 50 to 60 range, or high 40s to 60 range, and that equates to 17 ground units like infantry, or 5 airplanes. So I think that's pretty good for a game that is that dynamic. So on to the main event here. We have Austin, and Austin's going to share with us a little bit of his bio, and then I'm going to ask him how he met Axis and Allies. Welcome
All
to the
right,
channel.
thank you for the introduction. My name's Austin, known online as Ozt or Oztea. I'm a house rules developer for the game. I play it, weekly with a group of friends that I have, and I tinker when I'm not playing. I'm tinkering with the game. I see it as a sandbox, and it is a thin history book.
There you go. Good. How did you come up with your name, by the way? I always forget that.
My dad used to call me, well, my name is Oztin, and my dad called me Ozt. So
Nice.
that was an online moniker that I got probably 25 years ago.
Nice. I was just talking to my grandson, and he happened to show up in one of my videos, and someone called him Winston Churchill. So I said, when you grow up old enough to play Axis and Allies, your moniker is going to be Churchill. So. And how did you first meet Axis? Oh, I'm sorry. What do you do for a living?
I'm a truck driver.
Truck driver.
Which actually does pull me away from being able to play as much as I'd like to. The
Sure.
more I've been driving, the less I've been able to play face to face.
Sure.
So
I'm a UPS driver myself.
Oh.
Yeah. So how did you and A or Axis and Allies meet?
Well, I went over a friend's house probably maybe 30 years ago, and he had the computer version of the game, which just fascinated me beyond belief. I didn't even understand that it was a board game at first at my young age. I just knew there were pieces moving around. It was World War II. Him and I would take turns playing as different powers, and I eventually bought the board game revised, and we played that every Friday into Saturday, Friday night into Saturday morning. As soon as we were old enough to drink with a couple of beers. So yeah.
Now, how important is it that this game is historical to you?
It's World War II is definitely
Good.
the most pivotal event to happen to the planet in the last 100 years.
Absolutely.
So this is a taste for younger generations. It's almost like a little dipping your toe into history
Yes.
and seeing what could have happened.
Yeah, that's
For
right.
better or for worse. So
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I one of the things that I don't think people get today, and it's an unfortunate truth of history, and that's that everything we have was accomplished through violence, was accomplished through someone willing to do something very, very bad in order to make it so that we can drive down the streets, and when there's a red light, we stop our cars. And when there's a green light, we move our cars. And that is only because some people stormed beaches where machine guns were being fired at them.
blood and treasure.
Blood and treasure. So tell me about your history with the game, the different versions. You know that we've had many, and also your play experience.
Well, obviously we played revised into the ground and
Yep.
hadn't even known of this is like right before the accessandallies.org era. So we weren't accustomed to like doing any bidding or anything or even changing any setups, just brute force trying to beat each other head to head. Eventually I got like Battle of the Bulge and a few of the other like D-Day theater games. But when Anniversary Edition came out, that was pivotal because that added Italy, it added China, it added a lot more ground space to tinker with, and it coming with two setups,
right,
primed us for it primed my play group for at about a 1943 setup or a tweak this unit here, a unit there, tweak this rule there, tweak this rule here, and that was the ultimate sandbox for me and my friends. I had a house rule set up for that turned that game from fun to amazing.
now, let me just interrupt real quick. The back of the revised book. If any of you have never looked or bought a copy of revised, can't recommend it enough. The back is a treasure trove of optional
national
rules,
advantages.
National advantages, just tremendous.
Those a whole bunch of flavor. Yeah, that's just flavor that you could sprinkle on the game to make it even better. And yes, I've had a handful of Oztea iterations of those national advantages, alternate national objectives.
Yes,
all that goes hand in hand, like gears coming together.
Yes,
to add historical flavor to these games.
Yeah, and I my channel, if you go into my channel's description, I say flavoring and fixing. Flavoring and fixing the game. So, balance you can work on with a bid, you can work on it with a lot of things. But adding historical flavor, like the Marines or like the bonsai charges, things like that.
Tiger tanks, etc.
Yeah. So we're up to anniversary. You got it, and you're playing it, and you're loving it.
Loving it, and global just expanded on that even more. That turned a sandbox into an entire beach worth of. And that's when we loved the 1941 start and setup in Anniversary so much that I felt it was just absolutely necessary to try and recreate that in the global. Because it especially with how much longer it is to play the global setup, the initial 3 turns are a little ponderous. I mean, they're great for learning how to play the game. The attack on France is a great example of like how units interact, how capitals fall, all sorts of different little sprinklings that Larry left in there to teach you how to play. But it's almost 3 unnecessary hours on the front end of the game. So winding the clock forward to 1941 gives the game a bit of a head start, gets you into the action quicker, and everyone, my play group plays it almost exclusively.
Nice, good. Yeah, I have often said that the game doesn't really start until America turned one.
Mm.
And really, because America is out of the war, it really doesn't start until China turned one, because a lot of the moves are fairly standardized. I mean, Japan purchases, but their attacks don't vary a lot. So you're right. I mean, you do have quite a bit of wasted time. Um, that's awesome. Let's see. So what about so you at that point in time? So you got
Uh,
global, and you've been
yeah,
playing
as
ever
far as
since.
action finales goes, nothing really new has. 1914 came out since then,
Okay. Yep.
but aside from that, and War Room, which of course I did have a 1941 setup for War Room as well,
I gotcha. Okay.
which I think it's lacking. That ever since the 1941 setup in Anniversary, I think 1941 should be the gold standard for,
Gold standard. Wow.
or that should be the starting line for almost any game.
Gotcha. And you have a 41 setup for War Room.
War Room, yeah, there's a handful of special rules you have to tweak for it, but it just winds the clock back a turn
Yeah.
or two,
Right.
and you get to make some set piece attacks like an attack on Pearl Harbor, or seeing Germany bash into Barbarossa, which
Right.
like those are the like pivotal points of the 1941 setups.
Very good. Very good. I have one of the things I urge Larry and Tom to do, particularly with their Nightingale games, is I want mods. So versions like yours that would be sold as sort of a mini pack for $20 or something like that, for $30.
In ancient Axis and Allies history, there such things existed. I
Right,
remember
right,
seeing those, even
right.
sold at game stores. If anyone's old enough to remember that.
But I always tell them, I say, the new players have lots of money, and every time their birthday comes around, they want something to spend it on. So the more product you put, you're just going to get a lapped up. It's going to be just eaten up. So you at that point in time, um, moving on to how do you play? You play with a group on a weekly basis. Have you ever been to a tournament? Do you play online?
I've played online occasionally. I recently downloaded the phone app version of the game, the 1942 app of the game, and
Oh,
it's it's a little it's a game. It's not really as much an experience as the face to face being with your friends. It
absolutely.
doesn't have any ability to tinker with it, unfortunately, but
Right.
I'm playing it to study because I'm going to Gen Con for the first time
Oh,
this
I'm going to Gen Con.
so I'll be
Uh,
there
the plan
this
will be,
June, or this
yep,
August, right? Yeah.
August 1st to the 4th.
Yeah, so I'll be there for the first time. I plan on entering the tournament.
Nice.
I'm not really that good of a player, to be
Yeah,
honest.
sure.
But I enjoy it, so we'll see what happens.
That this channel, I certainly interview people that are very good, but I also I want to interview mostly people that love the game. And that's what it's all about for me. I mean, like you said before, I'm a truck driver, so I've always had a theory that those people that are really good at the game are usually engineers and accountants that are sitting at a laptop for 8 to 10 hours a day, and they got the game in the bottom of the taskbar, and when they take a 10-minute break, they play around. I don't have that all.
Now,
I've had I had my most famous incident was I'm in the middle of what's called peak at UPS, and I have packages. I mean, I'm literally sitting in I have a camp chair with me, and I got my computer on my lap. It's like 30 degrees outside, and behind me is boxes and boxes, and I'm trying to do. I just captured Moscow, and I'm Germany, and I make a mistake because I had played a different version early in the weekends. And so the turn order was different in this other game. And I make a mistake according to that. And I'm like, I'm just trying to have fun. And the guy, of course, does a Berlin bank job, takes all my money. And I'm like, dude, oh, I'm not playing in a pristine environment. I'm playing where I'm at when I can, squeezing it in. Anyways, I sympathize. I don't think that it's just we don't have the time, and time is a big thing.
yeah,
So, I mean, obviously, it could be brains, could be CPU on my part, but time.
It's luck too. It's
A luck too.
yeah,
Sure,
luck.
sure, sure.
You got to be lucky to play this game.
I also think that a lot of the guys that are good, I'll just put this out there. I think a lot of them love to play Germany, and at least in global, I mean, up until a year and a half ago, the bids for global were 20 to 30 points less than they are currently. So you're talking about, 2009 is when the first global came out. They revised it in 2013, I think. So for 10, 11 years, people have been playing under bid, and most of the winners wanted to play the Axis. So, anyways, that's my little rant. So you were, even though you didn't play online, you had a lot of interactions on accessknowledge.org, because I was just talking to some guys in a WhatsApp chat, and they know you and like you and say you're a good guy.
I try to be. I mean, I've got a few needles in there and made some good points, opened some people's eyes to some ways to see the game. And I mean, I haven't posted on accessknowledge.org regularly for a few years, ever since I got this new job.
Yeah.
But I mean, I still check in every once in a while there, and Board Game Geek, those forums, just peek in to see what people are saying, see what people think the game is missing, what could change a little bit, and like what new ideas are coming over the horizon. But
yeah,
and almost everyone on that site is they're having a great time, and I'm glad that site is still up and running. Hope it's running for another 100 years.
Let me see if I'm just going to pull it up for our listening audience here, and then I'll screen share. But I think I saw that you had 1.6 thousand posts. I think that's what I saw.
And I think my 1941 setup post on there, I think it was somewhere near like 30,000 views or something the last time I checked it. It's somewhere in a high number of view counts, and I think it ended up getting pinned to the top of the house rules section.
Nice. I'm just going to look it up real quick. Balance map setup down here, so I can show everyone where to go. 41 global. This is, there we go. Here it is, Great Britain. I'm going to screen share so everyone can see this. This is a new thing I'm doing. I told Austin a little bit ago. Can your screen share is loading. Can you see that, Austin?
Not yet, but it might be popping up on, for the recording's sake, it might already have popped up. It might just not have gotten to my setup yet.
Okay. There it is. Okay. So this is the setup, guys. This is accessknowledge.org here. This is Oztea's 41 setup. This is he wrote a little bit of a introduction and all the special rules. So you can take a look at that. AAA is not the easiest thing to work with, but I have a couple of videos that shows you how to do it. I don't think it's that hard. I'm not that savvy of a tech guy. So I think it's absolutely worth your time. And it's like I think I love the word you used there a minute ago, sandbox. It's a great sandbox. Really, there's even map tools that you can mess around and build maps. Have you played with the maps tools?
I've tried, but I just couldn't get my head wrapped all the way around it. So
yeah, I'm going to stop sharing that part right now. My son just made a bit of a map. He's working on that. I'm going to close this out to make sure I don't kill my bandwidth. Okay, so then I'm back here. Your preferences. What's your favorites? Side, favorite nation, favorite unit?
I am told that I am the hardest to play against when I'm the United Kingdom. I find it very difficult.
Yep.
But their theme always seems to be maximizing very small, incremental little edges you have everywhere. You might have one or two more units.
That's right.
Just get a very risky attack. Do you want to make 5 risky attacks or 2 surefire attacks? you have a lot of options at the UK, and I always seem to, when I get to play as the UK, be a nuisance to my opponents. They always rue when I end up getting to play the UK because I seem to manage and navigate that just along the razor's edge.
Yep, yep.
Making an attack here and just one unit lives or just the right unit dies.
Yeah.
And it feels very thematic to the United Kingdom itself because they were running parts of the war on shoestring budgets.
Oh yeah.
There were parts of the war where they were down to, they had no reserves. I think there's a quote that I ended up using in a national advantage for the UK that when Winston Churchill asked, where are the reserves for the Battle of Britain? There aren't any. Everyone's up in the air. So
right.
It's do or die today. And it worked. It worked out for them, but there was a lot of the war that came down to, 24 hours, 12 hours could have changed the entire war.
Right. Very good. Very good. How about your favorite piece? Your go-to purchase?
Yeah, I was talking about this with my game group earlier because we saw this as a question and I couldn't really settle on one. So many of them work together as pairs or almost like triangles that the fighter is inarguably the most versatile.
Right.
But lacks that key ground control element. Right. So is it the strongest piece? Is it the most useful piece? It's a piece to be feared when it's on defense, but I've seen games where someone sat 12 fighters on Moscow and that's 120 IPCs sunk into no action. You've lost the game because you sank too much into using your fighters for defense.
Sure. Yeah, it's when I have a round where my fighters are not killing, I call them my killers because I mean, if I had a fantasy game, I would actually keep track of each unit and how many that particular unit killed, and obviously fighters would be would probably be the most. Have you ever heard? This is totally random, off not in the notes, but have you ever heard of a game called Dark Souls?
The video game.
Yes.
Yeah, the video game Dark Souls.
Yeah. My son plays it, and he says that they do what's called challenge rounds. So imagine a challenge round for Axis and Allies, and there's even a challenge round called no hit. Like you can't get hit once.
I can imagine. You don't get hit at all.
Right. So what if you played a challenge round? And I've tried this against the computer a little bit, just a couple rounds, but I want to, and even against the computer, where you cannot lose one airplane. So
a particular airplane, or
no, you cannot lose any airplane,
whatsoever,
the whole game. So obviously it would limit your use of the airplane, right? I mean, that would be that's the challenge part.
You'd have to overprotect it. It would almost be better to try the challenge by never building them at all, which would hamstring you significantly.
Right. Anyways, let's go back to what I was saying. Let's see. We have tournament preferences. So you've got a lot of information on axisandallies.org. Do you want to just give a little shout out to the people at axisandallies.org? Like I said, you have a good reputation over there.
I'm struggling to remember them all by name because it's been so long. But I don't have any enemies there, so.
Good.
And I used to be on Larry Harris's forums as well too.
Okay.
And used to be able to talk to Larry directly.
Yep.
And there were a few. There's a handful of instances where speaking to him directly, I was able to persuade him during the global second edition to
Alpha.
make a few tweaks here. Yeah, when it went from Alpha to it became Alpha. Or Alpha, I think, became second edition. And there were a handful of tweaks that I will say whispered in his ear, so to speak, that like in the opening 1940 setup, there is a British artillery and British tank that start in Paris.
Yep.
I think in the original setup, or the first edition, it was 2 French tanks and 2 French artillery. And I mentioned to Larry, well, there are no British forces starting in France, even though authentically there were still some British post Dunkirk milling around there. And you
Sure.
can tell a little bit of the story of World War II by leaving British heavy equipment like their artillery and their tank.
That's right.
You leave it in France, and you end up telling a little bit of the story of, well, like, where is Britain's best units? Well, they got
Right.
stranded in France.
Yeah.
Mathematically, it being a British tank or a French tank dying on the first turn is irrelevant to the gameplay,
Sure.
but it tells a little bit of the story of the war. And
Yeah.
there's a few other instances of that. In my 1941 setup, there's a damaged battleship.
Yes.
The Bismarck starts damaged in season 111 or
104.
109, somewhere in the North Atlantic.
Yep. Yep.
And Larry specifically pointed that out. He had never thought to put damaged units down, put damaged factories down.
Yep.
It tells a little bit of the story of the war between the pages of the rule book of the setup.
Very good. Very good. That's awesome. We're going to show 41 in just a minute, and we're going to do a little comparison, particularly of the numbers. Let me just make sure. You have oh, so you are going to Gen Con. That's your sort of future events. What about battle calcs?
Battle calcs? I use them occasionally, but sometimes I play by gut feeling. Like if I feel this attack has to happen,
yep.
There's been a lot of times when my opponents have seen me waffle over the table, like, I don't think I can pull this off. And then I go through with it anyway, and it mysteriously works. And I have a reputation for being a bit of a showboat, maybe. Like,
okay.
But they are risky attacks. Everyone else at the table or my teammates considering them genuinely risky, like maybe just 2 fighters versus 2 cruisers. But I need them out of the way because they're blocking a transport that needs to be somewhere else. So
have you ever played 42, the online version 42 with your phone, right? You said?
Yeah. I'll probably I'm Oztea on there as well. So if anyone happens to bump into me on there, I'm slowly trudging through it. I've probably played maybe 20 or so games by now. Okay. And it is unfortunately, I think, axis tilted. Yeah. I think without being able to bid on the phone, almost every game I'm playing is saddling me as the allies because people are volunteering to play as the Axis.
Right. Sure.
But I enjoy the challenge. I'm up to the task. I've won a couple. I've lost a couple. So
sure. Are you playing the Gen Con version, the 3.0
yeah,
or okay?
Certainly, yeah.
So I just did play that, and I threw the Russian fighters in against the cruiser and the transport. Just to try to save a little more Navy, British Navy. Plus, making it so that transport is gone eliminates a lot. I mean, you don't have the possibility of a sea lion. You've got one less unit over there, and no units can come to Leningrad through the sea. So it's a bit risky, but
it's ballsy. That's
yep.
But that's a high risk, high reward attack.
Right.
Typically, I don't play the Russians high risk, high reward. They're just math and manpower, but the British are high risk, high reward.
Right. Okay, let's get on to house rules. So, how do you? Is there sort of a methodology? Is this all practical medicine kind of thing? It's practical science. You're trying it out and just got an idea. How do you do it? How do you do house rules?
Well, I'll dig into some sort of either history podcast or history show or movie or episode or something like the World at War series. I'll end up watching a few episodes and picking out some little historical fact and wondering how the game could represent that, because that, to the people at the time, that seemed really pivotal. Right. So how could this reputation for that particular power leak into the game in the game's language? Like how do you speak bonsai charge in Axis and Allies language? And just the process of going through with that, national advantages, national objectives, special rules for units, setups. It's all just a sandbox of how can I contort this game, which is simple, but could be expanded into something more complex. It has the room to be more complex, so let's push the boundaries a little bit.
Sure. Good. And how much are you working with? You come up with a problem. You see a problem, and then you sort of work out the kink. Is that it?
Something, yeah, it's almost like translating into a foreign language. Like
Okay?
you learn some sort of historical fact or reputation or je ne sais quoi, and the French
Sure.
saying, and how do you get the game to speak that back to
Okay.
you, and that's going to make the game more fun in the long run.
Right.
I think
Sure.
it's
Sure.
especially going to make, or hopefully make it more exciting if a unit does something that you weren't expecting or comes through in the last minute. An added rule for the United Kingdom that they get some sort of benefit because of the Battle of Britain, like everyone who participated in the Battle of Britain, like some extra +1 or something. Or I think
Yeah.
in the war room iteration of that's so few owed to so many that Britain always gets a carrier plane that just
Yeah.
spawns from the United Kingdom territory to
Right.
just
Right.
add a little bit of extra oomph to battles that reflects just the air power that they were able to exert in battles.
Nice. Nice. And how about technology? Tell me about technology.
Technology is lacking right now, I think, in the standard iteration of the game. I think
Absolutely.
Anniversary got it right with the token.
Yes. Yes.
Anniversary hit the nail on the head that you were not investing in nothing. The
Hmm.
unpredictability is tolerable
Hmm.
because you get super subs with Russia.
Hmm.
I mean, that's bad, but it needs an inherent little bit of unpredictability.
Yeah.
But the wasted money is what keeps people away from it. Just
Sure.
rolling, spending 15 or something and getting nothing for it is, so I've tweaked that in multiple ways with multiple different house rules of experimenting with when you roll, you get a tech token on maybe a 2, 3, 4, 5, but you don't on a 1. So there is still a little bit of a risk of getting
Sure.
nothing for your investment. But and then I do have an entire 1914 technology set that I can't recall the name of the guy that I worked on it with,
Okay.
but we traded ideas back and forth for a few months and set up which I think regular World War II Axis and Allies might benefit from, there was a Central Powers tech chart and a Allied Powers tech chart.
Right.
So for rolling for your own power, you could get a tech on a 5 or a 6, but
Ah.
rolling for the opponent's power, you could only get it on a 6.
Oh,
So you
very
were
good.
sort of invested in, I should stick with what I know. I should stick with what's thematic to my faction.
Yep.
Like the Central Powers had, I think, gas equipment and stormtroopers, stuff like that. While the Allies had more economic uh, technologies that were theirs, or naval technologies that linked up with theirs.
Right.
So that added, we played with that a handful of times, and that added a little bit of flavor. That certainly made tech more useful and
Yep.
attractive
Sure.
to reduce a bit of the risk and increase a little bit of the thematic nature.
Excellent. I'm a bit of a nut, a tech nut. Just finished a game with a guy named Schulte, Sergeant Schulte. He actually lives in your neck of the woods.
Oh,
Yeah,
Pennsylvania.
yep. Even closer than that, really close to you, actually. And I think I've connected 2 people. There's two other guys on Facebook or in your area. So you guys got to get together.
Yeah.
So, but I played with him, and what we did was first round tech is a pick, 1 tech for free per side.
Mm.
Then the next one is every turn, free tech, but you roll. So the first one is a choice. I chose war bonds. He chose radar. And the next round, it went to Japan for him as the Axis. I chose something else for Britain, I think it was a long range aircraft or something like that. I try to do it historically, but anyways, because the amazing thing is that at the end of World War II, every one of those tech was in the game
In some one way or another, yeah.
in some way or another. That wasn't 1 or 2 like BBR at most. It was every single tech was in the game.
And some other text that we don't even see in the game where
Absolutely
we're in the game.
right
Like
there.
the first, I think that came up on a World War II History Channel that I followed recently, that the United States conducted the first drone attack during
Oh yeah,
World
yeah,
War
yeah, yeah.
II. Yeah, they
Yep,
were unmanned planes
yep,
filled with
yep.
bombs that they crashed into
That's right.
Japanese port facilities.
Yep.
So
John F. Kennedy's brother died in it.
yeah, there were
Who was the one that was supposed to be the president, and he died, and he was supposed to bail out and exploded before he even could bail out. Yeah. Hmm. Okay, so let's get into this. You have produced a version, the first time on our channel. Eventually, I want to do some reviews of games, the actual games people play, and it's loading up right now, and we're about to see the numbers. Tell me when you can see that. There it is.
okay. Yeah.
Okay, so if you are watching us, I'm going to move this out a little bit. I'm going to move our camera over. Okay, so these are the numbers that we start with. The left side is out of box, and the numbers that we're playing with here are, let me see if I can expand this a little bit more. Okay, let's go with this. So allies start out with 175. This is for production, 66. I better get my reading glasses on, like it or not. And then there are 100 and for pieces, units. Oh, let's just go over here on Oztea's, Austin's. It's 165. And then if you the Axis have 93 starting out. For piece count, 229. For the Allies, in your version in 41, it's 434 for units, and units 227 for the Axis, and out of box 331. And then the TUV total unit value 2700, 2073. Excuse me, 1499 versus 2794 and 2091. So I'm going to shut down the global side, and we're going to take a tool around a little bit. Your tech. I'm going to open this up for full screen. Play that. Stop spinning. Maybe I've got too many things going on. Gonna wait.
I've actually never looked up the numerical values on the
Oh,
AAA version of my setup.
yeah.
I did most of it just by feel.
Okay.
There were a few tweaks here and there from community feedback where some like glaring issues of like this attack is just way too easy,
Yeah.
or this attack, like this territory just can't be held. Maybe add 3 or 4 more infantry there. And I modeled it after what the game feels like 3 turns on, but all the piece quantities are inflated by maybe 20 or 30%.
Sure.
Because I tend to feel that for the global game, because the economy's bigger, but my setup is even bigger, that you get the feeling that the whole planet is sort of like whittling down its reserves of manpower, because you start with
Yes.
so much and can only replace some of it at a time. That certain attacks you'll make where it's like this is the Sixth Army attacking Stalingrad, and we might not be ever getting an army this big ever again. So
Yes. Yes.
so you end up.
Let's start with that. Let's start with the Eastern Front. You mentioned it. Let's take a look at the Eastern Front here. So we are seeing significant differences. Now, turn order is the same as out of box. So these units that are on the front, as in the real war, they are going to be crushed. They are, but on the other hand, if you take a look here, if on out of box, a lot of times you're going to see a concentration in East Poland. That cannot happen in this version. He does have 2 German transports there, so these could be used to attack the Baltics. But Bessarabia you have to put some units into that in order to take that out. So it's going to be sort of that three-pronged attack that we saw in the real war. So can you speak about the Eastern Front?
Yeah, that's definitely a storytelling mechanic right there, because that in reality happened to the Soviets.
Yep.
They were caught unprepared, so I put some premium units up there on the border. Units
Oh.
you would never imagine losing units in positions like this. Like
Oh,
a fighter
fighters.
protected by almost nothing, a
Yep.
tactical bomber landed alone, just
Yep.
in the path of something that's going to run it right over.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
so that is there is a story being told right there, and I like that the 1941 sets you up as the driver's seat in Barbarossa. So
Yep.
you're kind of pushed that direction. I've seen some people consider not attacking the Soviets on the first turn, and by
Really?
rule, you could wait one more turn. The Soviets can't attack you back, and you
Oh
could
man.
finesse your attack a little, but you're giving up. They're going to pull everything off the board.
Right.
So
Right.
it gives you and it almost puts you in the Germans' position that this attacking right now might be the best shot we ever have. So
Yes.
we just
Yes.
have to go with what we've got and try and make it work.
Yeah. Tell me about the political rules again. So, in normal global, these guys, Russians cannot declare war and fight on the fourth turn. I believe it is.
Yeah, they have to wait until their fourth turn, I believe. And
Right. So,
this my setup starts as if it is the beginning of the third turn.
beginning of
So
the third
any
turn.
I tried to change outside of a few very niche rules. I tried to change as little as I could mechanically with the game. So
Very good.
it's just pure setup. So anyone at their own home could just print out the instructions and do it, and that the game engine would be able to handle it because I made this setup I think in 2013. So this is 11 years ago. So the AAA engine could just handle it. It's just a new setup. Just pieces are in different places, but
Yep.
under the hood, the game engine will understand. No different national objectives. This is the most digestible house rule, and I think that might be why it's the most popular that I've ever made
Right.
because it feeds into the system just like changing a light bulb.
Right. Now, just want to note some things I think are interesting out in the Black Sea down here. There's units, which are really cool. There's a transport up here in the Baltic Sea, and then there's the uh, conspicuously missing Russian bomber that shows up. And then I just love the fact that you've got a lot of pieces that are spread out throughout the
That bulk of Soviet units ends up trickling back towards Moscow more often than not. And
right.
that is an artificial way to boost their income a little bit because
Yes.
I've always thought the Soviets are under incomed. So
Yes.
if you can get that back to Moscow in time to protect it, you'll usually hold. But if you want to get tricky with the Japanese, you have a lot of material over there that you could threaten their position with. And you
This
could turn the game
this
upside down.
fighter in Namor must tempt a few Japanese players to risk
Well,
it.
in this instance, Japan or the Soviets are going to go before,
Ah,
so
that's
usually
right.
that fighter's gone,
That's right.
but
You're right. Yep.
because
That,
it's way more useful over in the that
yes.
destroyer there specifically to stop bombardments because
Nice.
we've personally seen too many games where the Japanese fleet has nothing better to do than attack the Soviets, which is wildly ahistorical because
Right.
I promised the Japanese were not going to start a new war
No.
with just strictly because the Navy had nothing better to do.
Right. Right.
So,
Right.
but in too many
Yep.
games, there's battleships and cruisers just looking for a fight.
I'm sure most of us know that American ships left San Francisco for Russian territories, and the Japanese never touched them. Not once did they
Raise a
touch them.
different flag, and they didn't bother you.
Yep. All right, let's go to Japan next. Tell me about this Japanese setup.
Well,
I mean,
if in Europe you're right before Barbarossa, it's a bit of a time jump to combine Pearl Harbor. I mean, they both happened in 1941, so calling it a 1941 setup is understandable. And this puts you in the driver's seat for an attack on Pearl Harbor,
right
which
here.
is if you're especially for new players, just like how Larry had set up an attack on Paris as sort of how to play first turn. Over in the over in Europe, you'll get a how to play with the Germans making some pretty understandable attacks against the Russian units. And here, the Japanese are going to make a set piece sort of attack against the American battle fleet at Pearl Harbor, which is
can you say that one more time? The American battle fleet. There's two battleships here.
Yeah, 2 battleships, a cruiser, and by design, no destroyer.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
no
you.
destroyer. No destroyers, so that a few to speak the language of Pearl Harbor in Axis and Allies, there are 3 subs that can attack the Hawaiian Sea Zone on the first turn in this setup. They come from 3 different directions,
Okay,
but they can all get there.
Right here.
Yeah, and I believe from, one in Tokyo itself.
One in Tokyo, that's right.
So 3 subs can get there, and if you make the attack with 3 subs, 2 fighters, 2 tactical bombers, you'll win. You could squeeze in another fighter and another tactical bomber if you wanted to.
Sure.
But the 3 subs insulate as casualties. They added their own surprise attack rule, which is as good as you're going to get in the game's language for a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. And they're going to insulate against most losses of your planes. So it's going to look like the victory at Pearl Harbor. That
Very good.
The Japanese might lose a plane or 2, but the Americans are going to lose. And in Axis and Allies 101 gameplay, you would never leave 2 battleships alone like this. But it's telling the story of what happened. So.
Very good. So if in case you're concerned about this, let's take a look just to the right here. We have a small force out of San Francisco or San Diego, but then roaming the Pacific Ocean is our 2 carriers, destroyer, sub, 2 divers, and 2 fighters, as well as another battleship destroyer off of Central America.
I think those units are by design at the absolute maximum range for the Japanese. They could by rule attack them with 2 fighters and 2 tactical bombers. It would be suicidal.
Sure.
But there's nowhere else to put those American units to reflect the reality of that the carriers weren't there.
Right.
I have to give the American players some carriers something to hit back with.
Sure.
And I've seen other setups put them out in the middle of nowhere as well. So
excellent. Let's take a look at what's in America. So we have 2 bombers. I like that a lot. That was one of our big strengths before the war. Was 2 bomber. Was our bomber B-17s. Planes are. Let's see. So these planes normally start out here. There'd normally be a plane here. There wouldn't normally be a plane here. There'd be a plane here. So it looks like about the same number of planes. Yep, Midway has a plane now, which would normally be in Hawaii. Okay, so I can see that. That looks great. Great setup with a sub, American sub, and a destroyer in the East Coast. Go ahead.
Yeah, the total quantity of U.S. units that start land units. I've had some people criticize the setup that the best thing to do as America is just buy all transports, load everything you have to start, and just shuck it over to Africa or Europe as soon as you can, and just muddle up the German situation. And unfortunately, that's a consequence of starting the U.S. with so much surplus land units. But that's also to bleed off to artificially inflate their economy and then bleed those units off as they play. Because otherwise they're dragged down too much.
I believe I saw that the German income is 40-ish. 48. I'm seeing, I think.
That sounds about right. Yeah, they're
48. So they are 48. I'm not sure what that equates to in with the bonuses. So America's at 52, Germans are at 48. So yes, we do need some extra units that the Americans will not have to purchase because the Germans are still got a little bit of a sub fleet. And let's take a look at that Western theater. Take a look at Morocco, Algeria being owned, and well, I just think this is tremendous. We have Africa Corps.
I made a point to have German units starting. That was something that the out of the box game struggled to replicate.
Yes.
We
Dude.
never saw German units in there.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
can openers that German and Italian units can create in Africa is as good as you're going to reflect in
Right.
the language of the game of Rommel outthinking Montgomery down there. And
Sure.
Italians will attack, Germans will attack right after, break through. We've had that, you know, that feels like the war down there when you have
Yes.
those powers
That's
down there.
right. It does. And take a look. So look at some of the damages, by the way. I did want to note that because you mentioned it before. Damaged battleship Taranto has taken place. This battleship is damaged from it. Um, also, Malta has been bombed. Historically accurate, right? UK, 10 on the factory, 3 on each of the. That renders them inoperable, I believe.
Yes.
On the air base as well as the sea base. I guess I would have liked to see one of the German cities with a little bit of bomb damage, but
it
but
wouldn't have been an oversight, but I think the Allies do start a little ahead in this setup, and
gotcha.
it definitely slows them down, and in ways that the normal setup could never slow down. That your
Right.
air base is off on the first turn, but then it'll be on for the majority of the rest of the game.
Right. Bismarck is damaged out here in 118, and then you can notice that this sub does not reach what is it, 119, and but this destroyer acts as a blocker. So hitting this fleet, the British fleet up here, will be a challenge, but I think it could be doable if the German player were able or willing to buy an aircraft carrier. Well, that's a big if.
That is the big if.
That's a big
There's a
if.
few interlocking attacks up there, and I even set it up in ways that to attack the shipping, just to get a free attack on a transport is almost you just throw one of those Germans instead of sweating attacking the British fleet, which I don't think the Germans could have ever pulled off.
No, they couldn't
Sinking
have.
as many battleships as they do in most iterations of the
Yeah.
game,
Yeah.
but to attack the shipping and to end up with a unit in what is that 109, I believe.
Yep, 109.
So
Yep.
because out of the box, you almost never see the convoy rules take place with the German subs.
Right.
But in this setup, if you exclusively go after British destroyers, you can get as many, maybe even up to 3 turns, where Britain's destroyers are so few and far between that you can start hitting the British economy.
I tried a what I call destroyer wars, and that's that I will try to outproduce the enemy and have more subs than he has destroyers. So what I did was I attacked 111, 109, and 106. And I'm playing a game with a guy named My Games, who is a runner-up in the Out of Box 2022 championship. And I successfully was able to spread my fleet of subs all across this middle and destroyers, and convoy them on turn 1, which is my gold standard. But we'll see what happens with that. I'm trying to figure out. I'm like a dog that caught the fire engine. I'm not sure what to do with it now.
If there is telling of a story that I'm with everything with the setup is fun in mind and telling the story in a way that the game usually doesn't.
Yes.
But and the German sub threat actually shows through in the first 2 or 3 turns of this setup because of illogical decisions in the setup that you would never make as a player,
right?
But give you decisions that you're not used to making, like a free attack on a transport when you would otherwise be using that sub as cannon fodder in a much larger attack. You're making decisions that you're not usually making. So
nice.
That's why my game group likes it so much, because it presents usually out of box setups boil down to just 1 or 2 scripted, flow charts of attacks. But this presents almost like an entire tree branch of attack setups.
Just trying to show a little bit more of the entire Atlantic here.
Yeah.
So interesting, a sub in 106 with a destroyer. Obviously, the German player goes first, can attack that. Also, random in the middle of the ocean, 117 is a cruiser. And then the Russians, who could be at war first turn, because normally speaking, the Germans are going to, these are warships that can actually attack sub and destroyer here, and then there's plenty of fleet to attack if the Russian player wanted to down here, if they survive. And in fact, this fleet might have to be attacked by the German player, I would think.
That's pretty typical for it to be attacked the first turn. Yeah.
Sure. All right,
Utilizing your transports as Germany. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And as you brought up Italy before, Italy's in the tough situation of having a lot of material but not a lot of economy.
Right.
So a wounded battleship by itself, like what on earth? And I had to keep it wounded by damaging the port facility at
yes,
southern Italy. So
that's right.
When it comes to Italy's turn, what you've done to them so far, if you left that battleship alive, I believe they start at 13 or 14 IPCs, maybe
14. Yep, 14.
So repairing that facility is just enough to then limit them. They can no longer buy some of the premium units. I think they fall down to 11, so they can't get a cruiser,
Sure.
They can't get a bomber. So as Italy, it's almost telling the story of Italy that their economy just wasn't ready for this kind of war. And if you repair your battleship, you might not be doing anything else major this turn.
I'm going to tell just taking a look at southern Africa, South Africa, and southern Africa. We have actually a fleet over here. The French, what you wouldn't be accustomed to seeing, is the French troops are in French Equatorial Africa. There's actually a French transport as well as infantry on the transport and a cruiser there. The cruisers are not here; they've been killed. But here's a French mech, French infantry. French infantry moved out of Syria, excuse me, and then down here in South Africa, we have more units and a transport, which, a lot of guys, that is a popular bid unit that goes onto the board a lot of times to get this shuck going.
And that's another language of Axis and allies you're seeing right there, because the allies start with a little bit more than usual in North Africa,
yes.
Egypt, Alexandria, whatnot. But I have hamstrung the allies by breaking it into as many nationalities as possible. So they are in a position where they can almost never mount a successful attack, but they have enough material to parse out, but they're doing it ponderously because the infantry and the tank can't attack at the same time because they're different nationalities. They can defend together, but so that gives Germany a little bit of time to it artificially coaxes the British into defense. If the British want to attack alone, they're missing out on tons of firepower that would otherwise be there.
Nice.
So that's why they're broken up by nationality.
Showing, I didn't notice that 98 was had an Anzac destroyer as well as a French destroyer.
I think in real life, I think that was called the Scrap Flotilla for the Australian fleet. I think they managed to scrap together a few warships before Japan attacked while they were fighting in North Africa, and it was just a ragtag group of and it came through thematically as that whole British fleet could overpower the Italians easily, but since it's parsed up into different nationalities and can't attack at the same time, it gives the Italians 2 or 3 turns of operational authority, so to speak, until the British get more stuff there.
All right, let's take a look at Southeast Asia and what's going on down here. First China. China's been hit, but they still have a good amount of force. They still have the Flying Tigers as well as an anti-aircraft gun and an artillery. Very good.
That was one of the only major hiccups in the initial translation of this into AAA, that the Chinese just didn't have.
Right.
The mechanism in the game didn't even have an AA gun to give them. But I have always felt that China is the weak link in almost every Axis and Allies game, not only from a gameplay standpoint, but just completely inauthentically represents China's position,
Yeah.
because it's seeing Japanese tanks rolling through China on their way to Moscow is, from a standpoint of realistic geography, unfathomable.
Right. Right.
And how do you find the delicate balance between keeping China weak but keeping Japan able from bashing through instantly?
Sure.
So,
Yep.
so a few of the changes are, and I probably could have even given China, I think in a few bid setups we've played this with my play group, China ends up getting maybe just without a bid, just we agree to give them 4 or 5 more guys, because it's just where Japan has nothing better to do.
Sure.
Is in the national objectives, the national objectives help that dramatically for this game, because it drives Japan to where they would want to be historically. But too often in these games, the units have nothing better to do than just drive
Right. Into
drive
China.
west.
Sure. Sure. Yep.
And
Very good.
in reality, Japan had a hell of a time trying to get
Yes.
through not only the terrain but the banditry behind their lines.
Sure.
We've considered allowing changing the rule, because I tried to change my setup as little as possible rules wise. But a rule that keeps cropping up is allowing China to mobilize their units in any unoccupied original
Yes.
Chinese territory. So
I would second that.
Japan can't leave anything empty.
Yep.
Either tying a national advantage to that or national objective to that Japan collects extra money as long as they occupy every Chinese territory that they possess, or allowing China to mobilize behind their lines, just something to, because China is always the weak link in the Allies, indisputably.
Right. Right. You're so right. Yeah. At various times I've thought that I think there's too much money, particularly in China. I don't think that's realistic. I mean, the Gobi Desert is there,
That is a
and
good observation.
yeah. So I mean, you could actually zero out a couple of these territories where it'd just be hard to get through. A BBR does have where this is impenetrable. This barrier right here, except Kansu. This is impenetrable for the
Yeah,
Japanese.
I have a roll of that board somewhere. Somewhere in my game room, I think.
Right. So the British and Indian, forget what the name of those troops were called, but here is the setup down here, and
Far
again
East
we have a
Command.
mix. Say it again.
Far East Command, I think.
Far East Command. Gotcha. Um, and this they're not at war, so we have a mixed sea zone where we have a British battleship as well as looks like destroyer, and then also some Japanese units. And obviously, a lot of times I would assume the Japanese go to war first turn.
And this setup almost you're a similar situation as Germany in Europe. You due to some of the setup decisions, you're not going to get a better chance than now to make some of these attacks.
Gotcha.
So,
Gotcha.
and some of those units in transports at setups aren't something you see very often. I think the anniversary edition had that for Japan as well, but I scripted everything. Unfortunately, it is pretty scripted for Japan's first turn, but
Sure.
there are enough units in positions to take the entire Southeast Asia blitz that they did.
Yes.
Which stunned the world. That's something that comes through in history documentaries so often, that Japan's attack was unexpected, not only to the United States, but pretty much everyone, and how much they had gobbled up at once was shocking.
Yes.
Even to the Japanese themselves. The emperor's quote that I think too much is tumbling into our throat too fast or something.
Very good. So they're going to be able to grab, looks like Borneo, Malaya. I'm assuming Philippines from the north.
There is a way to get everything down there that they got historically. It's not difficult, but if you prioritize that, especially the national objective, especially because of the national objectives, if you prioritize those, you can get them easily.
Oh, you're talking about the money islands instead of.
Oh yeah, you can get all 4 money islands simultaneously, and if you prioritize that, and you can put Japan's economy into light speed, because there's like $25 down there that they can get at once. They can knock out the Philippines, which now that I know more about the South Pacific Theater, I should have started a bomber on the Philippines.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
Remove an infantry and place a bomber. It's inconsequential for the setup, but there was a real threat. I think we sent a
B-17s.
air wing of heavy bombers right before the war started. That was one of the final impetuses to Japan that we can't tolerate the Philippines being in American hands.
That's right.
Because these anything we do to just the British, the Americans could intercept at any time. So
right.
And there
Here,
are
yeah. Go ahead.
Good.
Go ahead.
At this setup, you could you could just attack the British still if you wanted to, and you get one more turn of you could opt to not attack Pearl Harbor.
Oh
which that truly to me is one of the biggest what if moments of World War II, that Japan starting a war with the United States that it knew it could never win.
Right.
And that's why I like 1941 so much, because that is truly when the war became a defining global war. Because if Japan had not attacked the United States, I don't know how long it would have taken the United States Congress to agree to do something about it.
Victor Davis Hanson thinks that, people say, oh yeah, we would have attacked. He says that if Japan had not attacked, we would not have entered the war.
If they would have only attacked the Dutch and not the British, I don't think the British were so hamstrung by the Germans that I don't think they would have done anything either.
Yeah.
So
just want to observe that Australia is quite a bit different too, Anzac.
I think like units. Larry Harris took off the factory from New Zealand in his Alpha setup. The original box game did have it. I re-added it and added a motley crew to New Zealand because I think there's just one of everything.
Nice.
So you end up leaving behind somebody just to protect it. Almost always it'll be the mech infantry. And I tried to beef Australia. It's another consequence of their economy so small. But if you trickle in a few units in odd places, it can gather together and be a little more respectable of a force. But then you have to husband it closely because you might never get a big enough economy to replace it all at once.
Right.
So you have to pick your battles carefully.
All right, let's look at the. I don't know. I'm not sure if that made it in here, but I'm assuming these are the national objectives. Is there anything new, or is it just
the original setup? These were out of the box. Okay. I changed nothing because I wanted it to be as digestible as possible for everyone else.
Excellent.
I envisioned this as a paper product that you could just print it out on your printer and just replace your setup cards and just roll. So it's that might be why it's so popular, because it's not so much house rules as it is just a bit of a speed up the game.
Yes. Is there? Did you say the tech is anniversary style, or is it up to the person?
I would like to play it that way. As printed, no. It's just
standard. Okay.
I have tinkered with dividing the tech into 4 subcategories rather than 2.
Okay.
And, so it would be air, naval, land, economy. So powers have a little bit more prediction of, like, obviously the Soviets are never going to pick the naval chart, and the techs are broken into just three per chart, with a 1 or a 2 being the first tech, a 2 or a 3 being, or a 3 or 4 being the second tech, a 5 or 6 being the last tech. So you could be a little more precise with the kinds of tech you're hunting.
I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah, that's very good. And in that perspective, if you're America and you're going to throw 3 dice, you're more likely to get, for instance, long range aircraft.
Yeah, they do break up into air, naval, land, and economy for the most part pretty easily. With land being, I think, advanced mech infantry, advanced artillery, and I think paratroopers are in there because they're a land unit.
Sure.
And then long range aircraft, heavy bombers and jets.
Yep.
Then you have super subs, advanced shipyards, and I think I had to warp radar into there.
Okay.
And the economy is war bonds, rockets, and there's one I must be forget. Increased industrial production.
Yeah. So that one is if you've ever played with this stuff, increased factory production actually ends up being fairly substantial, particularly against someone who has, for instance, rockets or is trying a
Oh, yeah.
bombing strategy. It's amazing. It's an amazing. It's an under evaluated, over performing technology.
And speaking of technology, there is a 1942 setup of this out there for. There's a global 1942 of mine
Oh,
so floating around. It might even already be in base AAA as a package. And there is a 1943 setup I have, which is on the forum somewhere, which I don't think was
oh,
ever translated.
okay,
But in both 1942 and 1943, I tinkered with starting nations with certain techs
excellent.
to give them a little bit of thematic, springboard. That you would start the Germans with super subs and advanced artillery, and you would start the Americans with war bonds and advanced shipyards. So you could crank in just with the rules out of the box, just a little more flavor.
Yeah, and I think if you wanted to talk about a bid, for instance, people might complain and say, well, the American economy in just the Pacific game, for instance, 1940, is huge actually, and it's more impressive than the when you put them together. And if you were to give America shipyards and war bonds, it would, I think, it'd be sort of a more realistic game. Uh,
I agree. Yeah.
yeah, shipyards is tremendous. So you're saying that you have a 42 version that you think is on the AAA, and did you say the 43 was the one you start?
There's a 43 version somewhere on the forums. It's not very popular, and it definitely hasn't been play tested as much. But
Okay.
it's just an experiment in translating that, seeing around the corner of the war. Like by then, the writing was on the wall.
Yes.
Post Kursk, the writing's on the wall. So I think I intended that game to be just like an 8-turn sort of who's ahead in victory cities game. Like
Gotcha.
Germany and Japan are fated to lose,
Yep.
but by the 8th turn, if you whittle them down to just their capitals, that counts as a win. If they hold you at the gates, counts as a win for them.
Gotcha. I'm going to close this up, stop sharing, and I think we're nearly at the part where I kind of need to go to bed soon, but because I got to be up for work. But what do you think about the future of the game? How are you feeling about stuff that's coming out of Renegade, as well as
Oh,
Beamdog, as well as just the activities with the tournaments and things?
I'm definitely excited for North Africa. It wasn't necessarily my pick, but I'm excited for that for sure. I've never got a chance to play Guadalcanal, and I have that
Okay,
on, so I'm definitely going to give that a shot. And the
excellent.
even if the games aren't balanced, they're going to be fun to just mess around in for a while and just wet my whistle for more Axis analysis. So I'm definitely excited to see those. And if I could wish for anything that Renegade Games could get their hands on, it would be a chance to get Larry Harris to take one more shot at the anniversary edition to bring
Oh,
it in line, modernize it with the new major and minor factories,
oh,
some of the new rules,
yep.
add a territory or 7 or so maybe to get it in line with the 1942 map. So like
Oh,
add
very good.
I think Malaya and call it the Larry Harris signature edition, because
Nice.
I think, unfortunately, Larry is up there in age, and I hope he lives to 100, but it might not be long until he's not making Axis and all these games anymore. So I
Yeah,
would like to see one final plant the flag signature edition because I think the anniversary edition is the most perfectly digestible, small enough it's not global, so you're not intimidating friends or
right.
family who see it. It still is understandable as a board game that could fit on a kitchen table,
Yep,
but
that's true.
it's bigger and better than 1942, which is purely just has reverted to just a pure game and
Right.
not a storytelling experience, because
Gotcha.
there's so many compromises that are made in the 42 setup
Sure.
that frankly, on the table in front of me right now, I am tinkering with a Oztea 1942 setup
Nice.
to rival the Gen Con setup, which the Gen Con setup is definitely an improvement. It brings the
Yep.
game way closer to balance, makes it
Sure.
way more playable,
Yep.
but it's just missing a few attacks that are A, B, or C attacks. It's all just too much.
Right.
I'm going to do A or B, and I'd like to see more like more opportunities to make decisions that units don't usually make. Like a cruiser is a blocker somewhere so that a sub can go through and maybe make an attack on something it wouldn't otherwise.
Right.
It might
Right.
just attack a lone transport. Mixed nationality units or mixed nationality setups like British Garkas already in China or Americans already in London, an American bomber already in London, maybe,
Right.
because that's a little bit of storytelling too, that the allies work together, and I don't, in a lot of setups you don't see mixed forces. You don't
Right.
see different game mechanics sprinkled in at the start of the game instead of what you might see at the end. And as a matter of fact, in the setup, Stalingrad and Leningrad are going to start with fully damaged factories.
Wow.
So
Awesome.
so that would be, since the Soviets go first, you're going to teach a player like this is what a damaged factory looks like. This is how it limits you.
Right.
And historically, Stalingrad at that point, the war was shredded. So by what rights does it deserve to be producing anything? So
Sure. Sure. Well, very good. Uh, I have my new feature is to end the interview with a chance to give a message to Larry Harris himself.
well, I already suggested the signature edition, so
Yep.
hopefully Larry can take that under advisement.
Yep.
We've spoken multiple times on his forums, and I've managed to make a few persuasions to him, open his eye to a few different things. I took his compliments to heart when he mentioned that he never thought to put a Bismarck battleship
Yep.
already damaged on the board, and how much of a story leaks through with that,
Right.
especially to a young person, a teenager, 12 years old, who knows only the bare minimum about World War II.
Right.
That's telling entire books have been written about that single plastic piece, and
Yeah.
and how exciting it would be to see it go and do something that it didn't otherwise do. It might survive. It might. I've seen players take that setup and do everything they could to save that particular unit. They've gone out of their way to save a German battleship that's never on the board otherwise.
Mm,
Just they build units at France, try and sail it down. It's put out there as part of the setup as far as it could be a way to be reasonable. It's unreasonable to try and save it, but
right.
something in your head says like, oh, I wish I could keep that unit alive. And just like I'm sure German High Command thought, I wish I could keep that unit alive.
Right. Right. Well, thank you so much for spending time with me, and look forward to further conversations and hopefully seeing you at Gen Con this summer.
Very nice. Thank you
I,
very much. It's been a
I'm
pleasure.
I'm going to end the recording, and then we can chat just for a minute. And thank you again. This is crockett36. Thanks for watching our interview, and be on the lookout for more. Are you sure you want to stop cloud recording?